In this video, we're going to learn how to use OutputCache inside of a method. Typically, we use it through an attribute, but we're going to use it in a method. So let's come here to Visual Studio. I have a newly created web API, so I want to first enable OutputCache. So let's come to the program class. Let's come here and let me say builder services at OutputCache. This is something that we have already done in the past here in YouTube, so I will do it a little bit quicker this time. So let me say here that I want to define the default expiration time for the cache. So let me say here default expiration time span equal to time span. In my case, since we're doing a tutorial, I will just put 15 seconds. So from seconds, 15. But in real life, you may use, for example, 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day, or whatever. So after this, let me come to the HTTP pipeline, because here I have to use this middleware, use OutputCache, and now we have enabled OutputCache. So let's use it. For example, let's come to controllers, weather forecast controller, and let's come to this get method. And in here, as you can see, we're simply returning this. But let's pretend for a moment that this method is very slow. For example, let me say here async, and then task, and then let me say this here, and I will say await task delay 3 seconds. Alright, so if I press Ctrl F5, we're going to see that every time we try to execute this method, we have to wait 3 seconds, which is a bad user experience, and therefore we don't want that. But let's see that first. Let's see that indeed we have this here. If I press enter, you can see that we have to wait 1, 2, 3 seconds for it to respond to us, which is horrible. So what we're going to do is that we're going to use OutputCache. So for that, we can use this attribute OutputCache. And that's it. With this, if we press Ctrl-Shift-B and come back here, we're going to see that now, if I press enter one more time, you can see that yes, at the first time, we have to wait 3 seconds. But after that, we can just press enter or F5 several times and we're going to get a response quickly, which is great. But there is a problem. What if we want to execute some piece of functionality every time we execute this method? It doesn't matter if we use cache or not, we want to execute a piece of functionality. Something that we can do is to use OutputCache inside of a method. Let's see that. Let's come here. Let's come to Visual Studio and let's say that I want to put here this functionality logger, log information, and I want it to always be executed whether we use cache or not. Executing get weather forecast, and let's see that indeed if we press Ctrl F5 and come back here, we can see that the first time we execute this method, we have this here in the console, but subsequent executions, since they go through cache and therefore they don't go through the action, we only get this once. But I wanted to have it here as many times as I execute this action, whether or not we use cache. So let's see that. Let me come here. Let's come back to Visual Studio and let's get to work. I don't want to use this attribute here, but what I want to do is to use a service called OutputCache store, which allows us to interact directly with OutputCache. So let me say here OutputCache store control dot, because I want to assign it as a field of the class, and therefore now I have access to it. So let's think about what we want to do. I want so that when I execute this action, I want to execute this, and then we want to go to the cache store to check if we have data for this action. So for that, first we need a key, because a cache store works as a key value pair. We have a key and we have that data assigned to that key. So let me say here var key. Of course, every key should be unique. So for this action, we're going to have the following key. Weather forecast get all. Okay. So after that, I have to check in the cache store if we have data for this key. So let me say here var data from cache store equal to await OutputCache store get async. We have to pass the key and also a cancellation token. In our case, we're not going to use cancellation tokens, and therefore we can say default here. And then I need to check if this is null or not. So if data from cache store is not null, then we want to return that data, because that data comes from cache and therefore we can retrieve it for the user. So let me say here, I need to check the data type of this cache store, and as you can see, it is a byte array, and therefore since from here I want to return an INO of weather forecast, I have to convert that byte array to INO variable of cache store. For that, we can create a method. Typically we put that method in a service, but for this tutorial we're just going to put it here. So private t, because this will use generics, so let me say convert from bytes to object type t, and then let me say here byte array bytes, and then let me say here var JSON equal to encoding tab UTF-8 get a string, because we want to convert from bytes to a string. So let me say bytes here, and then I want to deserialize this JSON variable that I have here into my type t. So let me say here JSON serializer dot deserialize t, and then JSON. Alright, so this is done, and of course, as always, I have to indicate that this will not be null. So now let's come here and let me say var data deserialize equal to convert from bytes to object. I want to convert to an enumerable of weather forecast, so let me just copy this and paste it here, and let me pass now the data from the cache store, semicolon, return data deserialize, semicolon here. Excellent. So this is for when the data is in cache, but if the data is not in cache, then we want to come here and we're going to pretend that we have to retrieve it, and that takes 3 seconds, and then we want to store that information, that data, in cache. So let me put this here in a variable value, for example, and then I want to return, of course, in the end I want to return, and here in between I want to store that in cache. First I need to convert it into a byte array, therefore we need a method for that. So let's come here and let me say private byte array convert from object to bytes, and let me say here object, then I want to serialize my object so that I can convert it into a string, so var JSON equal to JSON serializer dot serialize, and let me pass the object, semicolon, return encoding. Now let's convert that JSON variable into a var array, so UTF-8 get bytes JSON, semicolon here. Alright, so now let's come here and let me say var value to store in cache, let me move up a little bit, equal to convert from object to bytes, and let me say value, and now we can store this value into the cache store. So let me say await output cache store set async, and let's pass the key, the value to store in cache, so this variable that we have here. We're not going to be using tags, so tags equal to null, then valid for, which is the expiration time for this. So let me say here time span from seconds, and let me say 15 seconds, and then default for the cancellation token. And with this we're storing the information in cache. Now we have a small problem, and that is that we have here time span from 15 seconds, and also here we have the same information, but I don't like to have that repeated all over the place, so I will put it in a class. So let's quickly create a class. So here at class, I'll call it global values, I'll make it static, and I will say here public static read only time span cache expiration time equal to time span dot from seconds 15, and now we have this centralized. I can copy this from here. Let's come to the program class, and I can put here global values dot cache expiration time, and let me copy this and let me put that here in the weather forecast controller. Let me put this here. Let me remove this semicolon, and as you can see, now we have this value centralized. Now let's test our implementation. Let's press Ctrl F5 to run our application. And let's see that here we have this running, and we have here executing get weather forecast. Let me minimize this a little bit so that you can see everything. And if I refresh here, you're going to see that it indeed refreshed quickly, but also we have here the executing get weather forecast functionality being executed. So it means that indeed we're able to use OutputCache from a method. If you want to learn more about ASP.NET Core, Web APIs, Angular, and so much more, buy my Udemy courses today. I have a link with a discount to all of my courses in the description of this video. Thank you.